Today I'll be reacting to American versus Russian mentality. My friends, I'm super excited for this one, but before I go into that, let me ask you for one thing. If you can leave a like, thank you so much. It's the best way to show support. Now, if you can subscribe, well, in that case, forget about it. You make my day. Have that in consideration. Link for the original video in my description and let's play.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dari and today I want to discuss really interesting subject, the difference between Russian and American mentality. And for discussing this, I invited...
Before someone puts in the comments, oh, finally André is learning about his own country. I'm not Russian.
my American
I have Russian English, but I'm not Russian.
friend Sofia to join me. Since Sofia was born and grew up in USA and I'm on opposite, was born and grew in Russia, I think it would be really interesting to discuss this subject together. What do you think?
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's get started.
Well, to be honest, this could be a really interesting one because Russian versus American mentality is really different, I feel like.
Everything we say is coming from the perspective of two people, and they're absolutely not representative of the entire country because both Russia and the USA are incredibly diverse. So Dasha is coming from the perspective as a Moscow citizen, whereas I'm coming in as a young American. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and absolutely people from Seattle are not the same as someone, say, from Texas. So everything we say is going to be pretty unique to our own personal perspective of life that we've experienced so far. And just wanted to get that out there.
But I hope that after our discussion you have a better idea of the people in USA and Russia and why we can't make so friendship between each other. Sofia, you're living around 1 year in Russia, and could you please tell me one of the first things that I noticed that...
Oh, well, I did not understand this at the beginning. So she ended up living in America, but she is Russian. And this lady ended up living in Russia for 1 year, but is from Seattle, Washington. Okay.
quite different from the USA.
So I think in general, someone coming from the US to Russia, the very first thing they're going to notice is definitely there's a sort of difference in communication you have between a Russian person than you would with an American person. I find Russians to be much more direct than Americans typically are. And I think sometimes, especially if you're in a more mundane context, like in a supermarket or from a waiter, sometimes they can come across as quite rude. And I think this really has to do with the way Russian language is structured. Russian language is very direct, to the point, and blunt, whereas in English you speak with a lot of formality, there's lots of politeness. And I think when a Russian is learning English, they translate in their mind exactly what they say in Russian to English. So it's very direct.
You know what? I have experience with Russians in my country. Great people, by the way, the ones I end up meeting. But I tend to agree with this point. The interactions I had in the past, yeah, Russians are a bit more direct. We tend to say, and again, this is a stereotype for sure, but we tend to say they are a bit more cold. Like I said, tremendous people if you really know them, but they are a bit more cold in their approach.
For example,
in this case, before we go to the example, I actually believe specific Portuguese people and Americans are very similar. No, and I really believe this because we have a more close type of approach.
if you're in a restaurant ordering something, you would say to your waiter, like if you want something, you say like "давайте." But that literally translates to like "give it to me," which in English I think is quite rude to say to a waiter.
Yo, that's insane. If you go to a place, give it to me, that's offensive.
I don't think that means a Russian is necessarily rude. It's just the way the language is a bit different than English. And I have to sometimes remind myself of this because sometimes when I'm speaking to a Russian person, sometimes I kind of feel like they're being a bit too direct. Whereas in English, as an American, you try to kind of beat around the bush a little bit to be polite.
From that...
Again, repeating myself, I know, but as a Portuguese man, I relate with America quite more on this.
Aside for Russians, Americans seem too much polite. Like sometimes it's too much, like that they smile non-stop. And for me, it's kind of, and I think for most Russians, we don't really believe what they're saying because they're so polite, they're so smiley. Sometimes for us it seems that it's too much, like a natural smile. And even I sometimes thinking, is this person really mean so? And to be honest, when we just started, like for around 6 months ago, we met each other and you've been so nice to me. And sometimes I had thoughts like, do you really mean so? Like, do you really so nice to me? Like, because you like me as a person, you find me interesting, or you're just being polite?
I think in general,
Well, I guess I can talk about my experience on this also. When I started this channel, specific reacting more to American culture shocks, at the beginning, I also felt a bit of that. You know, oh man, these people are too nice, but what is going on here? Honestly, I felt that. Nowadays, I'm expecting you guys to be nice because I realized that's American culture. A lot of, not everyone, but a lot of Americans, they tend to be very positive. And yes, they are polite, but I love Americans because of that, actually.
an American prefers to avoid conflict, whereas in Russia, you're much more direct. Like if you have a problem with something, you're gonna say you have a problem. For example, you were mentioning the other day, if a waiter is asking you if you like your food, if you don't like it, you will say you don't like it and give the exact reasons why, whereas I would never even dream of doing that. I know like there are some Americans out there that certainly would do it, but none that I know. You would just kind
Wait, well, okay, this is maybe not true, my friends. Do you guys agree with this? If you don't like something in a restaurant, you guys don't say anything. See, this is a bit weird now. Because I think that's your right, you are paying for that. And you can complain about the service or the food and still be a gentleman or a lady. You know what I mean? Still be very polite.
of
Don't you guys agree? Both things can go together.
smile through it, basically, and suffer in silence if you really hate your food. And I think there's something to be said about
This does not sound American, to be honest. Suffering in silence. I look at you guys that, yes, you guys are very nice, but if someone, and I actually believe American military reflects the people a lot. If someone, you know what, we don't want to any problems, but if there is a problem, we fix the problem. This is the way I look at Americans.
constructive criticism as well. If someone comes up to you in Russia and you ask them, how do I look? Is there anything I should change? A Russian will just say, yes, you look bad and here's why you should change it. Whereas I feel like in English, as an American, maybe even a British person, generally you would try to say something nice and then say what you think they should change and then end it with something nice again. So that overall it's a really positive criticism, basically.
Yeah, I actually noticed it many times. Like for me, sometimes, especially if I don't have time, for me it's better, okay, just tell me what's wrong. I will change it immediately, especially I will probably ask only the person I like about their opinion. And if they don't like, I would better change it fast and then it will be looking good. For example, I would prefer that my friend tell me that I have something in my teeth and not going all day with this just because he's not shy and just tell me directly about this. But sometimes I feel like some people, especially Americans, they might be quite shy about this and they will just won't say anything.
I bet see sometimes
Really, my friends, do you guys agree with this? I'm not sure about this one again. Because like I said, Americans are very friendly, but I also can see them being direct when it matters.
I feel like Russians are too much. Like sometimes it's completely unsolicited, basically. So even without you asking, they tell you what they think is wrong. So sometimes like a Russian person, like maybe a babushka or something, they'll come up to you and be like, oh, you look kind of fat right now.
This is kind of weird thing. Like my
Okay, that's aggressive. I mean, geez, relax.
parents have it, my mom have it sometimes, and I'm like trying to teach her like, okay, that's something you shouldn't tell before I'm asking you about this. But yeah, this is more Soviet stuff.
Yeah,
like I would say young people, they're not like that anymore.
There's definitely a difference in mentality between someone who lived in the Soviet Union versus the younger generation in Russia, for sure.
Do you find Russians being rude?
A loaded question. I think, okay, so if I was coming into Russia as someone who knew nothing about Russians, I would say yes. But now I know Russians, I know how they act, I know how the language is structured generally, so I will say no. In general, Russians are not rude. They are just very direct and upfront with exactly what they want to say.
We all know that Russians are much less smarter than Americans. And how do you feel about this? Are Russians that cold as everybody think?
I think
Oh, so this idea that they are cold is also prevalent in America. This is interesting because we also have that here. So I guess this is a stereotype that most people tend to agree. The Russian community is that big in America. I honestly have no idea. Of course, I don't assume it's as big as, for example, people with heritage from Germany, Italy. But maybe Russian community is also big. I don't know.
think when you come across a Russian on the street, they're going to be quite a bit colder than American would be to you. Meeting an American on the street in the US, you're going to have a really good conversation with them, more likely than not. They're really happy to talk to you, they're smiling a lot with you, very polite, and it's not really a similar experience in Russia. It's a bit faster, a bit colder. But I think after this first stage of meeting a Russian, getting through their cold exterior, once you get to know them, they actually become a really warm person.
The most important thing is to break the ice with Russians. Once you break it, they become the most friendly people you might know. And also Russians are really welcome to invite to their home. They will bring you the best food that they have in house. And this is true. For example, Sofia just been in my parents' house for 5 minutes, and 6 months after, my parents still asking me about her, if she needs anything. And also my granddad wanted to bring her salads. It was on New Year's. The next day he wanted to bring her salads to try Russian food. So I would say that Russian might seem cold on the street. That's what I think, agree with.
Damn, I agree with this also. Because I also, like I said, I had experience specific at work with Russians. And I also felt in this that they are a bit cold at the beginning, but after that they share everything they have with you. It's actually kind of crazy because she was saying this and I was remembering all of my interactions with specific one Russian friend.
With each other, but once you break the ice, super friendly people.
There's this feeling of formality. There's a difference in formality when you first meet someone between the US and Russia. Yeah, so just to reiterate, Americans are much more polite and friendly to begin with, while Russians are a bit more standoffish.
Yeah.
So in Portugal, we always had a big is relative, but I would say a fairly decent Ukrainian community. And not trying to get political, of course, but Ukrainians and the Russians, from my experience, they are very similar in terms of personality, even though every person is different, of course. But you guys get, in a general sense, they feel more or less the same when you interact with them, in this case as a Portuguese. And this relates to me a lot.
But later on, trust me, Russian's gonna be your best friends. I would also want to share some of my thoughts, because from all the Americans that I know, because I studied in England, I studied in Austria, and I traveled a lot, so I met a lot of Americans along the way. And from what I noticed, I wouldn't make plans with Americans because I had few stories to tell. Shortly speaking, I met this amazing group of girls from America. We met in Greece. We started making plans, and they started, yeah, please join us to the trip tomorrow. Everything will be fine. We would love you to join. So I said, yes, sure. And then they canceled 10 minutes before the meeting. And this is, I found super rude. And I faced with these few times already that Americans, they really can cancel just in front, and they will say something polite. Probably I talked with another American friend of mine. He told me that they're really shy to tell in the beginning, so they give you false signs that yes, we're gonna meet, but in the end they already know that probably you're gonna cancel.
Well, actually, not the first time I see someone mentioning this, that Americans cancel things out of nowhere.
I'm so guilty of this. I'm so guilty
Oh, seems like it's true.
of this. Even if I really don't want to meet someone, I'll be like, yeah, let's hang out. And then we never hang out. But to be honest, I think you've just gotten quite unlucky with the Americans you've met abroad, because generally with my experience meeting other Americans, maybe it's because I'm American, if you meet a fellow American abroad, you can be friends really easily.
But we met just a guy 2 days ago on the street.
Again, I think that's just an unlucky occurrence.
So many people really like it. I don't know. For example, in Russia, when you're making plans, it's very serious, because you shouldn't break the plans, or you should tell about this in advance, because otherwise Russians are not going to invite you anywhere. For example, this guy, if he write me again, I will not reply to him anymore, because he just told me after the time we agreed to meet that he wouldn't be able to make it. So it's nonsense. And I would say that if you make plans with Russia,
Of course, we are all people, and there is an important reason for canceling a meeting. Okay, even if you just don't feel emotional good, the Russians will understand. Okay.
Russians, you for sure go. You will usually say one day before that yes, you should meet, and if you can't, it's understandable, but you need to tell about this in advance. And when we are making plans, we truly make plans. It's not like you say, oh yeah, we're gonna meet, and you both know that you're never gonna meet. Because in Russia, in 99% of cases, you're truly gonna meet with each other.
Would you say that Americans are a bit too positive for you?
Yeah.
What the hell? No, Americans are too positive. Thank God they are too positive, because we need more of that in the world, my friends. See, this is the type of stuff that sometimes I cannot see and stay quiet, because we need more people like that.
Yes. Sometimes
Disagree.
it's too much. That's what I mentioned in the beginning, that it might even seem a little bit fake when, like in Russia, I feel the person. I mean, I can understand.
Honestly, hot take, my friends. If you feel Americans are being fake, one thing is the first impact. Like I explained that at the beginning. But if you keep, thinking that Americans are fake after a while, shows more about you than about them, because you are projecting. Because at this point, I totally believe you guys are really amazing people. It is what it is. There is amazing people in the world.
Understand what he feels.
You know what? Clap for America. And this is a good time to introduce my Instagram account. Yeah, my friends, talking about positive things or funny things, I've been putting some country music reactions on my Instagram. Feel free to follow me there. I will leave a link on my description. André, I don't have Instagram. Well, no worries. There is a Facebook account that I post the same thing. So follow me at least in one of those.
What he
And by the way, leave a like if you enjoyed these videos. They are a bit more relaxing, not a lot of things happening, but I still enjoy learning about America this way. So feel free to leave a like if you are enjoying
thinks, most
my company.
like even if he's polite. But still, I can't understand Americans. For me, it's still difficult to get it. What about you? Do you think like Russians are on opposite, like
I think in general, Russians are quite a bit more pessimistic than Americans. This can be contributed to a number of factors, namely the historical context and the political context of the country and the Soviet Union.
I'm gonna say it. Capitalism versus communism, let's be real.
I sort of feel like Russians, especially...
Sorry, but we have to be honest on this type of videos. Of course, America gives... If you live in a country where there is more freedom and more opportunities, look... And I sometimes criticize capitalism because there is a dark side of that. Sometimes the rich keep getting richer and the poor, they are stuck. But in other end, there is a lot of opportunities that you can take. And if you work hard, this is where I love America, And I'm not sure about... and Russia, to be honest, is not even the worst place when it comes to this type of ideologies. But comparing with America, yeah, no chance.
Trying to change current events, Russians are a lot more apathetic and pessimistic towards things, and generally their sense of perspective on life is a lot darker than an American's would be. But that's kind of...
I wonder why.
Understandable, I think, with the pretty dark history of the Russian
Yeah, exactly.
country.
I would also add here about the level of life, because in USA level of life it's a little bit higher, maybe even not, let's be honest, not a little
higher,
bit,
yeah.
much higher than in Russia, especially like I'm from Moscow, it's one level of life. In other cities, completely different situation. So I would say because of this low level of life, that's people becoming darker, pessimistic and more negative, I would say.
Yes, I will say that my experiences with people in Moscow is quite different than my experiences in other places in Russia and other post-Soviet countries. Moscow is a very first world city. It has every single Western comfort you could possibly imagine, and the people are a lot more positive in Moscow because I think...
Never went to Moscow, but from the things I see, seems a beautiful city for sure.
There's a lot more opportunity in Moscow.
Yes,
when you go a couple hours out of Moscow, for example, say to Vladimir, it's a completely different story. People are a lot more negative, quiet, dark, and I also had a similar experience in Moldova, which is a small post-Soviet country.
Continue on subject, I would also say that many Russians think that Americans create some problems from nothing. And what I mean here, they're like focusing on some, for most Russians, even not a problem, but they sometimes, because one word, they can get offended, they can much more sensible, I would say. Do you agree with me?
Well, I think it has to do a lot with this facade of politeness that Americans exhibit. Russians just punch right through it right away. They go right in with being a little rude sometimes, direct, whereas Americans, you want to kind of not be so direct. But it's just like the way like Russians are, like they're very direct. Like sometimes in public, I think you're quite rude to people.
I'm rude.
What?
Usually everybody is saying how nice I am.
Well, maybe you're really nice for a
Oh no, I'm seeing a conflict starting on this video, my friend. Sorry.
Russian, yeah. But sometimes
Oh, she's backpedaling. You have to admit this was kind of funny.
like for example, when we're
Oh, she's messed.
checking out or in a restaurant, I'll be very surprised with how exactly you ask for something because it's so direct. Whereas in America, I'd be so nice. I'd be like, I'm so sorry for inconveniencing you. I know you're really busy, but do you think you could get this thing for me? Whereas you're just like, clean the table now.
Yeah, I would say this is
Okay, that's a bit rude. We have to be honest. I mean, I understand their translation maybe, and in their own language sounds different, but that's a bit rude. If you say clean the table, I mean, please.
already too much, and I will now say clean the table. I always all the time say, could you please clean the table? But
Okay, see, this is good.
what you're saying, that's what I meant about it's too much for me. It's like fake and like just no, like if you say this in Russia, people will think like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, right.
After living so long in Russia, what difference did you notice more?
One cultural difference that if you're coming to Russia and you're invited to someone's house, you'll notice quite quickly is that in Russia, it is expected for the guest to bring a gift whenever going over to someone's home. In the US,
Really?
this is maybe something that happens sometimes if you're going over to someone's house for the first time or it's a special event. But I think
Okay.
in Russia, almost every
Like a
time you go
birthday?
over to someone else's house for dinner, breakfast, anything, you need to bring something. If you don't, it's incredibly rude.
Yeah, I would agree with this. Here I would also add that usually when I'm coming to my best friends, we order something from home. It's not that I like have to bring something to them. And same, they're coming to me. But usually when I'm coming to their home and they're gonna be their parents, I bring something. But really close friends you don't need, but not super close, you bring all the time something, either flowers or mostly it's like candies or like desserts, something like this.
Yeah, at least with my friend groups in the US, whenever we go over to each other's place for dinner or something, we never do this.
Yeah, I would say that it's also common if you invite for the dinner to bring a dessert or cake. I think, yes, never go to a Russian place without some gifts. And
I was not aware of this. Not that I mean, going to Russian is not on my plans, but I did not know this.
the last thing that I would like to discuss is propaganda in the TV. Because in Russia, like basically what everybody's saying, and I know guys, there are a lot of Americans watching me, that's not what I mean, but Russians think that Americans are stupid. And
Yeah, look at America and look at Russia with all the respect.
on the other hand, I would say in American TVs, like all the movies, Russians are all the time evils, all the time bad guys that sometimes it's already kind of getting annoying. What do you think about this?
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely
Okay, probably sometimes I talk about Europe and America tend to paint Russians a bit worse than they are. That I probably agree. But the first one, that Americans are stupid. I was watching the war against Ukraine, and the weapons that America is giving them is not even the main weapons that America have. It's basically almost the trash. Yeah, take those two. We don't use them anymore, and they are causing so many problems to Russia. It's crazy.
media perspective.
Hey, I'm not trying to be political here, but this is fact.
Because I completely disagree. Americans are in general not stupid. Of course, America is a huge country, over 300 million people, so of course
America. You know what? I sound like an American, but I need to defend you, my friends, on this. Best minds in the world. Most millionaires. Look at all the companies that are in the top 100 companies. I don't even know the percentage, but if I had to guess, at least 80% to 70% are American for sure. Russia, I'm not even sure. So this is always, the guy that have no clothes talking with the person that is very well, looking amazing and say, oh, this guy looks so bad. I mean, come on, be real.
There's stupid people, but on a whole, most people are quite reasonable. I think a lot of people are very intelligent. And you know what? Russia's also filled with some really stupid people.
Yes,
also.
that's true.
Exactly.
Do you guys know that the economy in... no, I'm not sure about the country, but I believe at one point at least, I'm not up to date on this, but the economy in Russia was the same size as the economy in Spain. And Spain is, don't get me wrong, Spain is a tremendous country, but if you think about that, it's still crazy that Spain have the same, I believe was GDP of Russia. Don't fact check me on this. Could be France, for example, but I know it was a country that, comparing, you thought that Russia was, producing more value, but it was not the case.
But you're completely correct. In American media, for example, we're all watching Stranger Things at the moment. Russians are the villains. And this is true for so many movies, so many TV shows, so many books, that if you have a Russian accent, people kind of just think, oh, we've got a villain on our hands here.
What? No, I mean, not that I'm Russian, but you guys say that I have a Russian accent. My friends, is this true?
Yeah, like for me, it's already, to be honest, getting annoying all the time watching movies with like Russians all the time, bad guys, because our country is huge and it's full of super smart people who, by the way, come into USA for working, because that's where you get more money usually than in Russia.
Okay, I also want to say this: there is a lot of crazy smart Russians for sure.
But I would say that Russians also might think about this, because what we mentioned in the beginning, that focusing on small things, like, because for us it can be like, why you even think about this, why you're so offended that fast, why you think about this small thing, like it's nothing, just go on, like don't focus on that. So maybe it's also connected to this, but we discussed already why it happened.
Do you think Americans are stupid?
Of course no, like I know many Americans people.
Imagine saying yes.
Absolutely nice guys, and no way like I would think, because again, country is huge and Russia is huge, and I also think that there are many stupid people in Russia.
Stupidity is universal.
That's true. So guys, I think...
Oh yeah, there is a lot of stupid people in my country. I'm one of them.
This is already the end of the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's channel. I will attach the link in the video description. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, please guys, and also...
Okay, thank you so much, my friends. Jokes aside, I thought this was a really cool video. Sometimes I have this thing that I have to defend Americans for some reason, even though I just should be reacting. But, I react to American videos daily, so of course I feel some type of... almost I have to be protective or something. I don't know how to explain. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this with me, my friends. Really means a lot. You guys end up staying until the end. See you guys in the next one.